Welcome to another episode of Bite Sized. My name is Jun Cho, and I'm here today with my very special guest and colleague, Adam Barlow.
Hey June, thanks for inviting me. It's great to be on the show.
Adam, why don't you take a minute to introduce yourselves to the people on YouTube?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an engineer on the enterprise team, and I help organizations get ramped up with automation test suites.
Today, you have a very special tutorial for us on Espresso testing and how to upload that into Mobile Center.
Yeah, that's right. So today I'll be going through an app developed in Java and show how you can add specific libraries and dependencies into your Espresso test to make it work within Azure Mobile Center. Here you can see our application. So right now I have two applications running on my desktop. The first one being this emulator, and in the background I have the source code for this running in Android Studio. To run this test, we need a couple files. Within our Android Studio, we have two files. We have this Gradle file that kind of pulls all of our dependencies together right before we run this test, and we have the test file itself. What we are changing is, or I guess adding, is additional functionality in taking screenshots. So here we have this rule of this report helper being instantiated. So I have it currently commented out. Now what I want to do is comment this back in, and as you can see, we have a couple of errors already indicating, but what this report helper does is actually gives us the ability to add screenshots into our test and have step definitions. Why is this coming up right here? Why are we getting these errors? Well, it's very simple. First, we have to import the class itself. So we have two libraries that we want to import. The first one here is the factory, and the second one is the report helper. Now, first we want to set this up in the build Gradle itself, because this is a dependency. We want to make sure that the report helper is there when we compile this solution for the first time. So here in our dependencies, we can go ahead and uncomment this Android test compile. And here you can see that we are pointing to Xamarin.test, and we are supporting this particular version of Espresso. Yeah, so once we have this added, you can sync your new Gradle file, and now all of those red indicators kind of go away, but we don't have screenshots, and that's the whole point of taking tests, or at least doing UI tests. You want to see what your application looks like on a multitude of devices. Once we have this report helper all set up, we can start to add different lines of code. So this report helper dot label, we're going to add a new string in here, and this just indicates the step definition that we're at. So once we first launch the test, this is an indicator that it launched properly. The next step in here is going to look for this ID of new note, going to perform the action of clicking, and then it's going to check to see if an element exists. Now, once that happens, we're going to take another screenshot, perform another action, and so on and so forth.
Cool. So it seems like just two main steps, right?
Yeah, that's basically it.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Just to recap, you'll need to add your dependency here by adding this line of code. And then in your tests, you have to import two libraries, one for the factory and one for the report helper, create a new rule for that report helper, and then add the report helper label to initiate those screenshots wherever you see fit inside of your test.
Now, is this project all primed and ready to upload to Mobile Center?
It is. Yep.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so to get it into Mobile Center, this is actually pretty simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my web browser and show how you can upload a test. So this is the test itself. In fact, you can see at the very top left, I'm currently in this particular project for SwiftNote. On the top right, I can click this button called New Test Run. So once I click on this new test run, it's going to give us all the different devices that we have access to across all the different OSs that they support.
So Adam, are these emulators, are these simulators, or are these real devices? I'm not really sure what I'm seeing here.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I get this question a lot of time. These are real devices. In fact, we have a huge device lab of these devices kind of sitting on shelves, and we have multitude of devices as well. So the more popular devices, the more likely it is that you're going to have access to it.
I could see right off the bat that we have the Google Pixel XL. That was a really new device.
Yeah, exactly. So these, as soon as new devices come out by the manufacturer, we try to get them in and available to our customers the same day.
Very cool. And I also see that we have two different versions of the 6P, right? And it looks like one has 7.1 and one has 7.0 OS. Is that correct?
Yeah, so for every iteration of an operating system that's supported by a particular phone model, we're going to have it here. For this Huawei Nexus 6P, you can see that it supports Android 7.1.1. In fact, if I click on this icon for more information, you can kind of see how many devices we currently have available of this. So right now we have 26 devices that you can select from. And the same goes for the Huawei 6P running Android 7. And the whole point of this is, again, to have that coverage that you need.
Very cool. What's next, Adam?
Once we've kind of started this process of uploading a new test, I'm going to select the devices. So I'm just going to do a small subset. I could very well just click this button and select all 234 devices, but that would take quite a while, so I'm not going to do that. But what I will do is click on this filter, and what really matters to me is the OS, right? So I know that a lot of my users test on Android 5.1.1, so I'm just going to select this and then select all the devices, all 12 of these devices that currently support that OS. So once we have everything in our queue, I can click next and go to the configure step. So this configure step is actually pretty powerful. Well, you can change what your test series is, and depending on what group's going to see this. What I will do is select English. The last bit here is what framework. So we currently support 4 frameworks. Another one's on the way, but the ones that we can choose from today is Appium, Calabash, Espresso, Xamarin UI Test, and these are probably the most popular frameworks on the market today.
Adam, I'm going to kind of twist your arm here. You mentioned that there's another framework in the pipeline. Can you share with the viewers out there what that framework might be?
Yeah, so Espresso is to Android as XCUI Test is to iOS. We can't support one platform without supporting another, so that's the next platform that's coming out.
Wow, I didn't even know that was in the pipeline. I'm super excited for when that releases.
So once we have our framework that we want to upload in this list, ours today is Espresso, so I'm going to just select this. We can go on to the next step. Now in this step, we have to set up our environment. So we have to go through these prerequisites, which I think, June, you did a video on this already, didn't you?
Yeah, definitely. So if you want to see how to install these 2 prerequisites, click on the link below. It's going to pop up right here.
Awesome. So once you've set up your machine with these prerequisites and going through that video that June just mentioned, you'll then have to run this command line. So what I'll do is copy this. So what I will do is go into my Visual Studio Code and add this in here. This will help me just edit and kind of visually see what's going on. So how do we finish this? How do we get our test suite from our local computer to mobile center test? So first off, we have to get the application that we want to test again. The easiest way to do this is by going into our application project and right-clicking on the project itself and revealing in the Finder. So I have it here. In fact, let me go ahead and bring it over. And once I do this, you could see this Android test APK. So this is the APK that we need. I'm going to drag and drop it into my terminal and get the path for this particular file and paste it into here. And I could do the same thing with this Espresso build folder. I'm going to go into build, into the APK directory. And actually, it's this file here, but we do need to navigate to the directory that it lives in. So I will select that, drag it into our terminal again, copy path, and paste it in here.
That's so cool. You could just literally just drag the folder into the terminal and it would just spit out the path for you, basically.
Yeah, so it's a nifty little trick to kind of make this process easier. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And here, upload my test. You can see that it's navigating, it's running through the process. And if I go back into my account, we can see what a test actually looks like. So here I have a test. In fact, I have 2 that's running, or that ran, I should say. One passed, you could tell by this check mark, and another one failed. Now let's go ahead and investigate what's going on. If I open up this scenario, you could see very clearly, in fact, if I zoom in, for this scenario, we have this red lightning. A red lightning bolt indicates an error of some kind. Really, there's an assertion in our test that is expecting some element to show up on the screen. If it doesn't show up for some reason, it's going to call it a crash.
So Adam, I'm just going to put you on the spot here. I'm seeing one of your helpers here that just says blah. I'm assuming that is not a very good string to describe behavior in the test.
That is correct. This is not a best practice scenario, and I'm glad you pointed that out because that's definitely something I just put in there just to kind of like fill a void. But yes, you would never have that actually in a real test.
Gotcha. Okay.
What this last step is showing us, if I click on this, you can see that every single device failed. And that's because there's an error in our application. If I click on this device and kind of inspect what's going on, we actually give you a far more in-depth look at our application in action. So we can give you an overview of memory usage, of CPU usage, how long it takes for us a step to kind of complete. And for this failure step right here, I can click on logs and we can see the device log of everything that's happening on this device up to the point of the crash, right? Now, if I click on test failures, what we're seeing here is an error performing a scroll to function. So you can't actually scroll to because in the list itself, there was only one element, and scrolling crash the application. But we could see that here. And now that we know what part of our application's failing, on what gesture that the user was trying to perform, we can take that information, pass it back to our developers, and fix this as soon as possible.
That's awesome. I mean, this is basically the most efficient way to launch any kind of application into the wild, because you're constantly testing, you're making sure all these new features are passing, and then and only then will you release it into the wild.
It's a very powerful tool. It gives you an assurance and kind of this like safety net that you know everything that you're creating is working, and also gives you very detailed reporting on if something does go wrong, how you can fix that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Adam, for being here today. I really appreciate for you being on the show.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me. If anyone has any questions, you can go to my GitHub page.
Great. I'll put a link right down below to Adam's GitHub page, which contains all these test files that we just went over today. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you found this video informative. Till next time, peace.